morning. Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, welcome, welcome. This does feel like a classroom.
It is a classroom.
But I've never seen a classroom at 8 o'clock in the morning on a Wednesday. This buzzing with energy. So welcome. This is fantastic. My name is Raj Kumar. I'm the president and editor-in-chief of DevX. I see lots of good friends and supporters, people who are part of this movement around the room. It's wonderful to see you. Friends and family always ask me, what is this crazy week, this UN General Assembly week, when you're so busy, there's no time for anything, there's a million meetings, what's it all about? And I try to explain that for those of us who work on these issues, who work on global development and related issues, that this is kind of our Olympics. And this is the big week. We're all here, we're all in this, we're focused. A lot of the year is spent leading up to this. And last year, we kind of won gold. We got the global goals. And that is not a small thing. I think that deserves a moment of recognition, maybe a round of applause. The world has come together and agreed on 17 goals for the future of humanity, for the future of the planet. Not a small achievement. That said, as I have spent a few days here in New York and talked to many of you and many people in this community, I found that we're all still a little bit thinking about that great moment a year ago and how fantastic it was, and maybe not yet focused on how are we going to actually do this? How do we actually implement these 17 goals? And one of the biggest challenges, as we think about how to do it, is how do we think about gender? And there are those who will say, well, gender has a goal. It's goal number 5. It's there. And it was done. It was agreed to. And boy, there's 17 goals, and they're very complicated already, and there's 170-something targets and indicators. Do we need to, what is this gender lens concept that we've been talking about? Well, I think for all of us who are able to look and see what life is really like around the world, we realize that gender is core to every one of the 17 goals. And this idea of a gender lens is exactly that. It's that we look at all the goals from that perspective. I would argue, in fact, that maybe even the term lens, although we all mean the right thing by it, is wrong, because it's not about adding something. It's about taking away. It's about taking away the things that block our vision. Because if we look clearly at any of the core issues, whether it's poverty or hunger or health, the fundamental issues do center around women and girls. And what you're looking at here today, this assembly of people from incredible institutions working on these issues around the world, is basically a recognition that we get that, we know that, and we are ready to ensure that as we implement these goals, we do not let up even for a moment on the most important issue about rights and health of women and girls. So there's no better organization to do that than Women Deliver, and then this initiative, Deliver for Good, which is meant to do that. And I can't think of anybody better to bring up and tell us about this, to kind of push our community forward than Katja Iverson. She is a force in this community, and rightfully so. Katja, please.
Thanks a lot. And thanks a lot to everybody, partners and friends, colleagues, new friends we've not seen before. I love my friends and family in this movement, but I also love to see new people at the party. So it's great to see faces that we've not seen before either. But welcome, Her Royal Highness, welcome. It's wonderful to see you here again. I am so excited and energized by this, even though it's a Wednesday morning, that we are here together and we're going to lift this up and hear all the voices about why it is so important to put girls and women at the center. I'm Katja. I head this wonderful organization called Women Deliver. We work on the health, rights, and well-being of girls and women, and more importantly, we try to gather everybody who want to join that cause. We are lucky to be here today because UNICEF Canada has lent us this great room, this great classroom. Thank you. Thanks a lot for that, David. And we're all together here today to highlight the simple truth that evidence keeps showing that it pays to invest in girls and women. It creates that ripple effect, and it powers progress for all to go way beyond the individual, its families, its communities, its nations, it's the whole world. And now we have the SDGs. I don't know, do you remember how exhausted we were last year? I do. and the work had not even begun. Now we kind of had a year to kind of get it into to shape and start really the action. So that's what we're going to use to Deliver for Good campaign, to take words into action. And we're just going to show you a little video about it, and then I'm going to say a couple more words.
There stands a girl or woman able to turn the tide of adversity into a tidal wave of progress. We simply have to commit to her. Deliver for Good is a global campaign that applies a gender lens to the Sustainable Development Goals and promotes 12 critical investments in girls and women to power progress for all.
It's an integrated campaign, multi-sector, where we put the woman, the whole woman, the girl at the center. Not a disease, not an issue, not a body part, but the whole woman.
Girls and women carry more than babies or water. They carry families, they carry businesses, they carry potential. And when we invest in their health, rights, and well-being, it creates a positive ripple effect that lifts up entire countries. Give girls and women access to health care. They will deliver more resilient families.
Women transform societies, and when you empower them, they empower everybody else.
Give girls and women the chance to learn. They will deliver stronger economies.
We have to go as far as we possibly can to eliminate barriers, get rid of laws that are different between men and women, to make sure
wherever
that women
inequality
have accounts
lives,
and access
there
to
stands a
capital.
girl or
Those
woman
are
able to turn the
things
tide
we
of
need to
adversity
do
into a
to
tidal
have
wave of progress.
growing,
We
competitive
simply have to commit to her.
societies.
Give girls and Deliver for Good is a global campaign that applies a gender lens to the Sustainable Development Goals and promotes 12 critical investments in girls and women to power progress for all.
It's an integrated campaign, multi-sector, where we put the woman, the whole woman, the girl at the center. Not a disease, not an issue, not a body part, but the whole woman.
Girls and
Should we turn that one off? Thanks. So you heard the basics of it, and it's those 12 critical investments in girls and women, political, financial, programmatically, that will bring the high returns. And there's no shortage of amazing organizations and institutions and entities that work so hard on this. Financial, and there's absolutely no denying that
babies
progress has
or
already
water.
been made.
They carry families.
One
They
of the
carry
issues
businesses.
has been that we are, it is a great video, but should we just stop playing it? But it's often happened in silos. So working on this campaign, and again, looking around this room, it's great to see, because it's people from where we come from originally, the maternal health, the sexual reproductive health and rights area, but it's also nutrition, it's also land rights, it's the women economic empowerment, it's broader gender equality, it's political participation, education, climate change, access to resources. So that's great, because we really want to push to work together. That's how we're going to speed up the progress. And that's what Deliver for Good can help doing, by really working together and doing what we all do well, but just do it coordinated. So at the dawn of a new sustainable development era, it is time for this inclusive approach. I want to pause and highlight the 10 partners, original partners seated in front here. We plotted and schemed and talked and planned, and it has just not been possible to develop such a campaign, such a broad campaign, without that insight and collaboration. And it's also fun. So you know, kind of imagine you can make change happen, and you can have good fun with good people at the same time. So we're so grateful that you're all on board. And you know, we also know that so many more organizations are joining, and we are both grateful and humble. So what is it that we hope to achieve? Well, it's mobilize across sectors and mobilize experts and organizations. And it is, of course, to inspire action and policies that can put girls and women at the center of development. It's such a critical time, as Ross said. You know, we had all the global kind of brouhaha. No, that was much more than that. But you know, it's on the ground. It's in the countries now that we got to see girls and women be at the center. And then we want to build the evidence base. You know, as advocates, it's so important that we keep getting the new facts, the new figures, the new solutions that we can see what happens. So what has already been developed in great collaboration with fantastic partners are 12 totally in-depth policy briefs. If you haven't seen them, you should have a look. It is, what's the situation, what needs to be done, what's the benefit of doing it. It's super good. But we also know that all of you are busy people, so we thought we would do the cheat sheets. So all 12 of them have an infographic. They still fit, as we always do our materials, in a suit pocket or a handbag. And they have what's the situation, what needs to be done, and who benefits, and what's the ripple effect. So these are the cheat sheets, and we have printouts for all of you. So take them, and they're also online. Really good for social media. So the specific asks are designed to bring the policies and the advocacy out from further than New York or where other headquarters we're based. So in order to ensure the calls to action resonate and that we are able to inspire a true transformation integration and the change that we need everybody in this room on board. So because that's the only way we can deliver for girls and women, that's the only way we can deliver for good. Thank you.
Thank you, Katja. And I just want to take a moment to recognize who are these partners that we've actually brought together in the room today. And I'll ask you to give them a round of applause at the end. Advocates for Youth, I believe, is here. If you maybe just raise your hand if you're here in the room. Advocates for Youth in Gender Health, GAIN, the Global Alliance for Clean Cook Stoves, the Guttmacher Institute, McKinsey & Company, Management Sciences for Health. I see Jono back there. PATH, Pathfinder International, WaterAid, World YWCA, and UNICEF Canada. So a round of applause for the partners for Deliver for Good. What we are going to do today, a little bit like the classroom environment that we're in, and especially those of you who are in the back and sitting down, you're getting that real experience, remembering the grad school days. We are going to go around and hear from a number of the people who are working on these issues every day. We're going to ask them to ground it for us, to get us into a discussion, to think through, well, what does it really mean? Now that the hard work has actually started, to actually implement these goals, what does it mean? And how do we do it? And so it's an incredible group that we'll hear from. And I want to emphasize, although you're going to hear from this great group I'm about to read off, and you've heard the name of organizations that have already joined, I believe there's still the opportunity to join this initiative. It's not too late.
Let me say it like this. There's the commitment to girls and women that thousands have signed already, and I think the last count we had was 200 and a couple organizations that had joined, apart from the 10 core partners seated here in the front. So it's going to be a sea change.
And if you've been itching to figure out how your organization can be a donor to this initiative, there is still that possibility, right?
Yes, and donor can become in many ways. We have in kind, there's money, there's smartness and expertise and evidence and all of that.
We need all of it. We need all of it. So let me, with that, just kick off the discussion. And we're going to go one by one again, very kind of quick lightning rounds. It's going to be a little bit like TV, live TV, so we can move through the group quickly. But just so you know who's here. Anne Birgitte Albertson, the CEO of Plan International. Patrick Fine, the Chief Executive Officer of FHI 360. Chris Jochnick, the President and CEO of Landesa. Nana Taona Quo, the Senior Manager, Every Woman, Every Child. Teodoros Melese, the Director General of the International Planned Parenthood Federation. Karen Mundy is here, the CTO at Global Partnership for Education. Dinah Musindarwezo is the Executive Director of FemNet. We've got Peder Michael Pruzan Jorgensen, who's the Senior Vice President of BSR. Christine So, who is the Senior Vice President and COO at PSI. And I believe Makala Krishnan from McKinsey is with us here as well. So thank you to all the panelists that we'll have today, the interventions we're about to hear from. And Gerda Verberg as well, the coordinator for the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement, is here. And Gerda, I know you've got to leave a little bit early, so we want to start with you.
Okay.
We put you on the spot first, if that's okay.
Yeah.
And maybe just to kind of kick us off since you're beginning, what does this initiative mean for you? What does Deliver for Good mean for you? And you can obviously put it in the context of your work at Sun, but why should we care about Deliver for Good? Why is it so important?
It's crucial. Scaling up nutrition is a movement that brings sectors and multi-stakeholders together at country level to improve nutrition. And we all know that good nutrition starts with investing in young girls, adolescents, and pregnant women, because the first 1,000 days of children are of eminent importance. If the first 1,000 days are spoiled by malnutrition, children have never the opportunity to improve and to have the capacities, to have all their, let's say, all the capacities developed to the full extent. Deliver for Good is an excellent partner because they are there, they are doing the advocacy, they are pushing, etc., and always putting women and children in the center.
And you've got a new strategy this year, right? A new nutrition strategy at Sun. What is that going to mean? How do women and girls fit into that strategy?
Well, they are, again, and even more the center, because after 6 years, Sun Scaling Up Nutrition was started in 2010.
What is that going to mean? How do women and girls fit into that
second
strategy?
phase, and the second phase is people-centered and result-oriented, and to build concrete results at country level, you need to focus on women and children. And for that reason, we are very happy to partner with Deliver for Good, because by partnering you can strengthen each other, you can support each other, and you can make the push towards concrete, measurable results even bigger.
Thank you for that. Just to underline, there is no way we'll actually hit the global goal on ending hunger. There's no way we'll do it without women and girls being part of this conversation.
Sure. As in several goals, almost every goal, I would say. Yeah. So let's do it.
Thank you for that. Let's move to Anne-Brigitte Albertson, who's the CEO of Plan International. Thank you for being here. What are your thoughts, just to kick us off as well? What are your thoughts about this initiative and why it's so important at this time?
Well, I mean, we obviously all know. Do I have to press something, or does it happen on its own?
I think it happens on its own.
Okay, thanks a lot, Raj. I mean, we all know, and let me just take a thread from you, that there are so many goals that will not be met if every single one in this room and everywhere else doesn't do something different tomorrow than we do today or yesterday. And that means that we all need to fundamentally look at how we work together with others, how we collaborate, how we challenge ourselves beyond what we've ever done before. Deliver for Good for us is a start of such a challenge. Look at all of us. Together, yes, we're all part of the same movement, we're in the same space, but if we could actually take this out of this room and work together in a different way on the ground, on the advocacy stage, and bring all the leaders together to move, that's a minimum of what is required. And obviously, we need to just give oxygen to the girls. Yeah. The girls are on the move. The girls really are driving for a better destiny for themselves. And I don't see many of them in here. But what we really need to do is to give them as much oxygen as possible and help them drive this movement forward. And this can be part of it.
That's a great point. We are going to hear from one young leader later on today, but that's such a great point that it isn't about us doing something for them. It's about empowering people to really make their own change in their own lives and their own communities. I want to talk about data and metrics for a second, because I know at Plan you're working on an SDG tracker to look at how do we even know if we're making this kind of progress. How does this fit into the conversation today?
Well, you know, governments got away with not setting up an accountability framework for the SDGs. We've all celebrated for a year, and it's fantastic to have the goals and the indicators, but there really isn't an accountability framework. So all of us in this space, again, we've got to come together to hold governments to account for the promises that they've made. And let me just emphasize the word promise. We keep talking about the SDGs. SDGs is not a framework, it's not a piece of paper, it's not a report. It's a promise. It's a promise to every woman and girl that the world will change. And we need to then have the courage to collect the data, to show where we're falling behind, and where governments and we all are falling behind. So the SDG Tracker Initiative is really bringing together Women Deliver, the One Campaign, KPMG, International Women's Health Coalition, Data 2X, data partners, analysts, etc., smart advocates that can take what we know and the evidence and correlate different data sets to see, is the needle really moving? And we can put out every year some really fantastic products that will help everybody in this room with real evidence of, are we moving? Yeah. And so far, we're actually not moving. There's a lot of energy and there's a lot of talk, but the needle on the lived realities for girls and women in the communities, certainly where we work, 90,000 communities around the world, that lived reality doesn't look much different today than it did last year. So that's what we want to bring together, energy around data, evidence, and accountability.
And if there's anything we learned from the MDGs, we need a running start. There's nowhere you're going to get there in 15 years if we don't have that running start. It was, of course, in Copenhagen that Melinda Gates announced a big new initiative around data for gender, and I think $80 million investment in that area. And in fact, one of our reporters wrote a piece called Making Gender Data Cool, and actually you were one of the people cited in that story. You're one of the women making it cool, and it's critical that it becomes something that we all focus on. It's not a side issue, it's core to what we're working on, so thank you for that work that you do. I want to move to Christine So, who's from PSI, Chief Operating Officer at PSI. I was looking at some interesting things from your background, Christine, and noted that you not only are a long-distance runner, but your first job was scooping ice cream. So this is yes, you said that publicly.
I wasn't expecting that.
It's Googleable, so if it's Googleable, it's fair game.
Right.
I thought people might be interested in that. Tell us a little bit about what you're doing at PSI and how it fits into this initiative, please.
Sure. Well, we're really excited about this initiative because we see this as really kickstarting collaboration on the SDGs. We know that with the MDGs, it took us a long time to kind of get together and start pulling in the same direction. And this gives us an opportunity with women and girls at the center to really be putting together that partnership and those collaborations that are going to be necessary to do this. We live in such a complex world, and at PSI, we focus on global health. Again, with women and girls at the center, but we know that we can't do that by ourselves. We have to be working with others. We have to be working with others from different business sectors. We have to be working with others from different technical sectors, and we've got all of those people represented here in this room. And so we see Deliver for Good really being a catalyst for how we're going to work together to achieve the complexity of the SDGs. I hope we can achieve it. We've set the bar high for ourselves.
I know PSI works a lot on sexual and reproductive rights. Where do those fit into this agenda? How, again, this room knows it, but it's always good to hear that reminder. Where does it fit into hitting these goals?
Well, it's critical. I mean, it's critical at so many levels. It's critical at the personal level of the woman, the girl, the boy, the man. We all have to have control and understanding and access to good sexual and reproductive health and rights. But then it affects the family, it affects the community, it affects society. So it really is at every level. And I mean, we all know also that it's a very sensitive area, and it's an area that many people would rather not talk about, not address, not deal with. At PSI, we are really saying we have to put control of our sexual and reproductive health and rights in our own hands, in the hands of those women and girls, so that they can make the decisions that make sense for them. And without, I don't generally say empowering them, they are empowering themselves. And that's what we are trying to do by putting that control in their hands.
Thank you for that. Patrick Fine is here, the CEO of FHI 360. You've been working in development for a long time across lots of issues in government, outside of government. You now run a major implementation NGO. You know, it's very easy to silo all of these issues, and you've seen that over the years. How do we get away from the siloing mentality and begin to see women and girls as the cross-cutting issue that it really is?
Yeah, we pay attention to the evidence. At FHI 360, our motto is the science of improving lives. And the science tells us that in order to address the issues of adolescent girls and women, that you've got to have the convergence of a set of different interventions that addresses nutrition. Nutrition is absolutely key. That addresses maternal and child health, that looks at things like immunizations, that looks at education, so it cuts across sectors, and within sectors it also requires bringing multiple different approaches to bear. And if we just follow the evidence, it tells us that if we really do want to see women and girls empowered, it's not going to happen if they don't have the nutrition necessary to learn. It's not going to happen if they don't have the opportunity to go to school. It's not going to happen if they don't have family planning services so they can control their own reproductive destinies. And we've got to bring those things together and see them part as a holistic approach to addressing the issue.
And now that we've got this big agenda, we've got the global goals, I know you've written that this is the year we've got to get from the goals into action. What is that going to really look like? What's that going to mean?
Well, I love the fact that this is a campaign. And I think taking a campaign approach is a smart way to address the problem. Because particularly if you look at the issue of adolescence, we talk a lot about adolescence, and we've talked a lot about the importance of adolescence, the demographic trends globally that are putting youth and adolescence right at the center of the development agenda. But we haven't done as much. Our actions haven't followed our rhetoric because, frankly, working with adolescents is hard. It's a lot easier to work with kids. It's more, they're cuter. That's right, they're cuter and they're not rowdy. They're easier to handle, and it's easier to mobilize public opinion and resources to address the issues of children because we all have sympathy for them. To address the issues of youth and adolescents who are getting into sex, who are starting to strike out on their own, who can be involved in violence, who are more difficult to control, that is a tough sell politically, and it's also just in terms of how do you address it in a constructive way is difficult. So I think a campaign approach to mobilizing understanding, awareness, resources, evidence, and action is the right way to go, and I congratulate Katja and Women Deliver for bringing us all together.
Thank you for that. Yes, we know what to do. In a way, we're going to have the data to do it and the metrics to do it, but you're right, we still need to push. It's not over. The push was not just to create the global goals. We still don't have global consensus in a way on what needs to be done. Dr. Tedros, the Minister of Foreign Affairs from Ethiopia, was last night at the Every Woman, Every Child event, and he said, I absolutely endorse every woman, every child, but let's add and every adolescent. Looking at the banner behind him. I agree, that's a critical issue. I want to bring in Chris Jochnick now, who's the president and CEO of Landesa. And I think everybody knows Landesa for your work on land rights. How does that fit into this conversation? We haven't brought up land so far. Where does it fit into the discussion we're having today?
Great, thank you. Well, we know that the majority of people living in poverty share two traits. One, they live off the land, and second, they don't enjoy secure access to that land. And that insecurity leads to a whole host of development challenges, including all of the issues that we're talking about today. So getting the land rights piece sorted out is absolutely critical to almost all of the Sustainable Development Goals. And that's the piece that we really want to focus on. And in the past, that issue has been one that has been largely neglected by much of the development community, so it didn't make it into the MDGs. We were very pleased to see that it has now been included in the SDGs across 3 of the goals, and probably most importantly in this one addressing women's rights and access to land. And so for us, connecting those dots to these other issues and using a collective platform like this one is absolutely essential to really putting land on the global agenda and starting to address it.
Yeah, I think it's in a way pretty obvious where it fits in with the rights of women and girls. I was in Kenya once, and I remember meeting a farmer, and she said to me, and she seemed to have a thriving farm, and this is a very rural area, and everything looked great. And then she explained to me how hard it was for her to get to that point, and explained that really her husband had passed away, and then his brothers tried to take the land, and she didn't have the money for a lawyer, and it was quite a long saga to really be able to hold on to the land that was hers, that she had lived on and farmed forever.
Right.
So where are we on this when you think about those stories like hers? What is the kind of current status of women in terms of their ability to own and hold title?
Unfortunately, that is a very common story, that either by law or by custom, women are not permitted to inherit land, to own land, to manage land. And that essentially creates a two-tiered system where women are second-class citizens, and that affects everything, their food security, their livelihoods, their health, their education, and probably most importantly, their political voice. And so when we go to the field and we talk to women who have received a land title, the first thing they talk to us about is not the food or the livelihood, but it's that sense of dignity and the fact that they are now viewed as real participants in their communities, and they have a voice. And so that political aspect of land rights is really essential also.
So thinking about this initiative and this campaign, what are you hoping to get from this when you think about land as an issue and the critical importance of it for women and girls?
Yeah, well, I think as others have said, what's really essential now is that we break down some of these silos. So many of these challenges are really challenges of political will. And we have to rally our collective influence, which means we need more business leaders to join the coalition, more governments, more advocates from the global south. And so for us, connecting land into a larger platform like this, and then working with other groups to connect those dots and begin to highlight the central role of land to women's empowerment, all of that is part of what we're looking to get out of this, and we hope we can really contribute to it.
Thank you. I want to bring in Petter Michael, where are you? There you are, from Business for Social Responsibility to talk about the role of the private sector. And you've been very vocal about this, saying the private sector has a big role to play in the global goals. How do they fit into the conversation we're having today?
I think they've fitted in multiple ways. We think the private sector is incredibly important, both as an actor, but also as one who needs to really do its job. And they align very much with this campaign because the objectives of the campaign are business objectives. Mm-hmm. You can look at these 12 investment areas as areas of investment that are relevant to business and where they need to seek a return. And that return is a return for women and girls, it's a return for business, and it's a return for society at large. And the private sector needs to have a voice in this campaign. The private sector is the biggest job creator. Women go to work, they are in a workplace. That workplace needs to respect the rights of women, and it needs to offer education opportunities, it needs to offer a healthy work environment, etc. So there are lots of ways that the private sector should be involved. There are lots of ways that it will benefit. In many ways, when we look at it across the 12 investment areas, we can see that by investing in maternal health, by investing in reproduction, by investing in education, etc., there's a return in the workplace. And that is something that the business really needs to see.
Yeah, I'm always sensitive to even use the term the private sector because it's so big, it's so vast, it's almost everything, right, the private sector. But you at BSR work with lots of big corporations, major international players. What do they say to you about these issues? Where do you think we are in terms of getting their engagement with the global goals, and then particularly the engagement on women and girls as a core theme through the global goals?
I think we have a long way to go. And I think, as you say, the private sector is vast, is very heterogeneous. There will be companies who really understand this agenda and that are acting on the agenda, and there will be a number of companies to whom this is completely foreign language, and the mere notion of investing in girls as women is even more foreign to them. So there's a huge job for us, and I think it's critically important that we not only focus on the large multinationals, even if they are critically important, they are not the most important touch points for most women and girls. So this is why when we're thinking of it, we are also looking very actively at how do we engage the private sector sort of at the SME level. How do we get a private sector voice much more powerful than what we have today? So we released a report together with Women Deliver and the Dutch Ministry of Foreign Affairs earlier this week, where we really said the private sector has 3 different roles to play. One, it can act within its own spheres of influence, which is really about directing its procurement spend to women's own businesses, to businesses that employ women and that provides a workplace environment that respects the rights of women. They can enable and their business partners to do better to promote women's rights. But also, and this is a critically important one, we think that the private sector needs to have a very strong public voice. In many societies, the private sector is the authority. It is not necessarily politicians. It's not necessarily the people that we would look to in Western societies. It can very well be that it's the owner of a factory who has the most important voice in a community. He needs to be sensitized. He needs to speak that deliver for good is deliver for good for his business as well.
Right, and you wonder to what degree people at that level even know that we have global goals, right? So we've got a big job to do to make this truly universal. Go to that. I know you need to go, and I saw you had your hand up. So.
Yes, well, but I have a question, because I think I agree to a certain extent with with you, sir, but I don't agree to the full extent, because it's too smooth and too general. If it's true what you say, why didn't you do it already 10 years ago? I think it is necessary that the private sector takes a stance also vis-à-vis the government or the local government, that they want to have women and girls at the center, the same, get rid of old customs, get the legislation right, etc. And then private sector can do a lot. The point at this very moment is that you have some good private sector companies and some bad private sector companies, but the global image of private sector is not very positive at the moment. So there is a lot of work ahead. So roll on your sleeves. We can work together.
Thank you. No, I completely agree with that, and I think that was my message, that to many companies this is a foreign language and there's a lot that they need to do, and there's a lot that they can do. So I very much agree with that.
So you have to convince them.
Absolutely.
I think
that's why we're part of this campaign.
I think we all play a role in that. We all play a role, and there's a lot of work for every sector in society. There's a lot to be done. Thank you very much, Father Michael. I want to move to Dina, who's with FemNet, and just to ask about how does this agenda tie in and align with your agenda at FemNet and the work that you're doing in Africa?
Hello, good morning, Your Excellencies, all protocols observed. FemNet is a Pan-African women's rights organization. We are a membership organization, so we have members in over 43 African countries. And our role is to mobilize and coordinate African women's voices and make sure that they impact policies at different levels, at the national, regional, and the global level. And FemNet actually played an important role in bringing African women and girls' voices to the global platform and influence the SDGs and the 2030 agenda as a whole. And so we are committed to ensuring that we take back then the 2030 agenda back to the African women and girls and make sure that their voices are heard throughout the process of implementation. So the Deliver for Good campaign is aligned with what FemNet is already doing in terms of mobilizing women's rights organizations across Africa to start holding governments accountable to implementing the 2030 agenda as a whole in terms of what they have already committed and ensuring that they are prioritizing gender equality and women's human rights within the agenda. FemNet is doing that through holding campaigns, online and offline campaigns, but also going to specific countries and sensitizing women's rights organizations. We might think that we had 2 years of consultation around the 2030 agenda, but actually when you go on the ground, not so many people are aware of this agenda. And for them to be able to really own it and hold their governments accountable and play an important role, they have to know what this is all about and how it is aligning with their own lives and their everyday realities. And that's what we are doing in different African countries. So for example, we have already been in countries like Zimbabwe, Malawi, Zambia, Mozambique, Kenya, specifically mobilizing women's rights civil society organizations to engage with this process, but also to linking it specifically with other existing women's rights instruments, because the 2030 agenda did not come to actually replace the progressive women's rights instruments that are already in place, such as CEDAW, such as the Beijing Platform for Action, that our governments and global leaders have already committed to and have not yet delivered on those. So I think the 2030 agenda provides a platform to implement those, but not necessarily to replace. But also at the African level, we are really engaged in working with the African Union, working with other mainstream civil society organizations, in ensuring that there is a clear strategy on how the 2030 agenda is going to be implemented. And so we see this aligned with the Deliver for Good campaign, mainly because then we are going to make sure that the Deliver for Good campaign is also inclusive in terms of the African women and girls' voices, their reality, their interest, and their needs. But also, Deliver for Good provides a platform for us to ensure that we have cross-learning across the globe, that we know what Latin America is doing, what Asia is doing, and so we're excited about being part of this platform.
I know we in this room have some impressive organizations represented. I didn't even mention all of them. There's WHO is here, UN Women is here, and it's easy for us to sort of forget about the groups that are actually doing a lot of the work on the ground at the national and local level. You mentioned the local feminist organizations. Can you try, again, it's diverse like the private sector, but try to give a little voice to what would they say if they were in the room in terms of what their challenges are on delivering on these kinds of these goals and the agenda that they have in front of them?
Yeah, okay.
I know, for example, one issue I've seen a lot is that local rights groups have a hard time getting funding, that there's a lot of funding for project implementation, but for women's rights, there often isn't.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we're talking about fundamentally, whether it's land rights issues, we're talking about fundamentally political rights and political issues that require support too. So maybe you have something to say about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think for the women's rights organization and feminist groups from the continent I come from, I think one thing that we have experienced with them and some of the challenges they have expressed, you have mentioned one of them, and one is really an important one, which is access to resources, financial resources, but also human capacity resources in order for them to be able to effectively engage and make sure that their voices are heard. So that's the one key challenge that we have seen, reducing resources going to feminist groups. And yet we know that these groups play an important role in bringing about change, but yet when it comes to resources that can act as an enabler for them to bring about the change that they have the potential to deliver, that is often lacking. But also the other key challenge that I often see is also the issue around information. So sometimes we come to the global level, we have these amazing frameworks, but to what extent are the groups at the local level understanding the specific commitment that our governments have made? So ensuring that, a group working at the grassroots level, a group working in young women, adolescent girls, that they do understand what their governments have committed to, enables them to have information to hold their governments accountable. But also, the other issue apart from information is also capacity building. So sometimes it's capacity building in terms of which kind of tools do they have. So it's really important to have tools, to develop tracking, monitoring tools, together with them. They need to really be part of the development of those tools that then they can use to track progress in terms of women's rights and gender equality.
Thank you very much for that. I want to bring into the conversation Teodoros Melese, who's the Director General at the International Planned Parenthood Federation. And I know that you work a lot on sexual and reproductive rights. In fact, I've got a little quote here on something you recently published, where you say, "Words are easy, but now's the time for real political will," that term again, to translate these ambitions into action. So what are you hoping to see this initiative, this campaign do to help generate that political will?
Yeah, thank you. I think we have, first of all, as part of the campaign, to celebrate what we have achieved in making sure that there are the promises of the SDGs. Sometimes when you arrive at a certain place, you think it's done, it's easy. We have to take the lesson of what were the challenges, and now the next phase is the promise, ownership at the local level, ownership at the government and national level. That's why in IPPF we say locally owned, globally connected. It's really critical that the agenda is going to be owned at a national, at a community level, and individually. And that's what this Deliver for Good is going to be helping us. And the other important thing which has to be noticed is that there are some facts which are there. One is, we say the statistics, approximately 50% of the population in any place is composed of women. The second thing is we are a result of an act of sexuality, although we deny. And then the other thing is a woman who gives life. And if there is that denial, that empowering is not, it shouldn't be looked at as something phenomenal thing. Sexuality has to be part of that life, comprehensive sexuality education. And for us also, from the comprehensive sexuality education perspective, sexuality is not the only thing. There are other things, the education, the nutrition, which has been mentioned, the labor laws, which have to encourage women, and the transformation of the society to enable girls to complete their education. Every family planning effort, every dollar that any government is spending, they save $6, and that can be invested in generating employment. But unless a girl is empowered, avoiding early marriage, the legal components, unless there is a control of your own fertility, to own it, we call it, know it, own it. That's about your sexuality. Unless that is done, then the result is going to be, we preach, we accept the education, the women empowerment, but we have not laid down the ground for girls and women to be enabled for that. And that's what we are committed in this campaign, Deliver for Good. Good should not be just a dream. It has to start with a certain reality of taking care of the girls and the young people from every sector of the community.
And give us a sense of that reality, because you work on this every day, and you echoed something that Dina said, that Katya led us off in the beginning, which is, yes, these are global goals, but now it's about focusing on each country and how each country is going to implement at each local level. What are some of the challenges to, you gave the math, the return on investment in a sense of investing in family planning, yet the gap is still so huge. Why is that? What are some of the barriers you face every day in your work that show kind of that we're not there yet?
One of the biggest barriers is that politicians, they don't look at the long term. They better deal with a car accident than deal with a challenge which is going to be coming when the election term is over. So we have to ensure that the communities, through that long-term commitment, investing in the budgetary, they like to build bridges or schools, even though it's empty or overcrowded. How do we engage the communities to say that what we live today will have an impact for tomorrow? Because pregnancy takes 9 months. A car accident just happens, and it's all over the news. It's also the media. How many women are dying in the developing world, for example, today, due to unwanted pregnancy? What's the maternal mortality rate? In some countries, it's 1,000 for every 100,000. Every year, that's what the days is. But when are we going to be conscious of those facts? So the biggest challenge, although there is always hiding behind culture and so on, I don't believe there is any culture who believes in days. Every culture, any religion believes in life, and especially the life of the woman who gives life. But that is misinterpreted, because they want to own us in such a way that we are blinded of what the reality is. So our biggest challenge, how do we mobilize the community leaders, religious leaders, and those also the cultural actors? It's not to present it that culture cares for humanity. Culture cares about a woman's life. These are really, the logistical. You don't have enough commodities to be arriving and every village for schools to be provided comprehensive sexuality education. Some of the teachers are negative, or they don't want to do that because they are ashamed themselves. How do we really break that? And then the logistical, the financial, the material, I think one pill a day is not going to be that damn expensive when you compare it, the price, what is going to be saving at the life, and the increase in the productivity for the community. And the peace, one of the issues, the land issue. It's not just the land is not shrinking. It's a population which is exploding, and we don't have enough land to share. Feeding the animals or grazing land, the water, all these are linked. And who's going to look for water? It's women in one of the developing countries. So I think we need to do more work to convince for politicians what they do today will have an impact in the election, even if it's not, at least for their son, because some of them or daughters, they want to give heritage to their children.
Well, thank you for reminding us of what's really at stake and for bringing back up the point that Patrick made earlier, that this is a campaign, it's about political will. That's absolutely core to what we're talking about. You may have, those of you in the audience, noticed that there's a bit of a theme here. We're touching on all of the various sectors that are represented in the SDGs, and I want to make sure we bring in education. Now, Karen Mundy is here, the Chief Technical Officer at the Global Partnership for Education. Karen, where does education fit into this discussion?
Thanks. The Global Partnership for Education is the only global multi-stakeholder partnership that's devoted solely to education, and we deliver, we're the fourth largest funder of basic education in low-income countries. We are a partnership that comprises 65 countries, donors, civil society, and teachers' organizations. And I think over time, over the lifespan of our partnership, it's become increasingly clear to us not only the power of education in supporting the rights of girls and women, but also the need for us to work in an intersectoral fashion to achieve the rights of girls through education. I think we all know this. A healthy girl attends school and learns better. A girl who is educated also becomes healthier. Education has a protective effect on that girl. And education leads that girl to the capacities to provide better healthcare for her family. A girl who goes to school is 6 times less likely to be married as a child. And a girl who goes to school increases her economic empowerment, with gains of up to 10% in her economic productivity. So in all these ways, education has ripple effects, but we also rely on other sectors to ensure that girls come to school safe and healthy, that they receive integrated services so that they can really become the empowered young women that are necessary, that can contribute to the achievement of all the SDGs.
When you think about this idea of a gender lens, and apply that to education, give us a sense of where we are in that discussion. Do you find, as you meet with the 65 member states and the many other organizations working in education, that it is now standard, de facto, everyone gets it, that we have to think about girls at the core of this, or is it still a separate item, an afterthought? Where do you think we are?
I think at the global level, we talk a good talk, and at the national level, there's much to be done. Across GP partner countries, we've seen enormous gains in gender parity at the primary level. But in many countries, and I would just highlight countries that are affected deeply by poverty, by crisis, and by conflict, the capacity of girls to transition from primary into lower secondary education, and remember that's the time at which adolescence kicks in, that's the time of sexual debut, that those girls are not being served by their educational systems well. There are pockets in almost every country in our partnership where gender equality is far from being achieved.
I see a lot of nodding heads on that point. I appreciate you bringing it to the discussion. I want to bring in Nana Taona Kuo, who is the senior manager at Every Woman, Every Child. We brought up Every Woman, Every Child a little bit earlier today. We were talking about adolescence as well. Give us a sense of what is the global strategy now? There's a global strategy on women's, children's, and adolescents' health. And how do you see that actually playing out at the national level, as Karen was talking about in education? How is it starting to play out in the health space?
Thanks, Raj. And just to note, we absolutely recognize the importance of adolescence, and it is in the global strategy. That's one of the new additions and a key learning from the MDG era. We can't achieve our goals of SDGs without including adolescents at the center. But also, I think just to start, why we are a supporter of the Deliver for Good campaign is because Every Woman, Every Child and Deliver for Good campaign very much sees putting women, children, adolescents, and girls at the heart of the SDGs. So we all know the SDGs will launch. It is a grand vision. It's a grand plan for the next 15 years. But the key question is how are we going to achieve that? And we see we cannot achieve that without putting women, children, adolescents first, recognizing they're actually the key drivers of the transformation that we want to see. Women are first responders. Women are the center of the family. They're the ones who really are driving change in their families at the community level and also at the global leaders level as well. So one of the key, I think, issues that we look at now is framing that for action so that the highest political leaders, the first thing they think about when they think about that SDG plan at the national level is putting women, girls at the center and actually putting the investments there. And the Deliver Good for Good campaign really communicates that really, really well. With the 12 investment cases, it presents that case that this is not only a moral imperative to put investments in women and girls, but it is an economic incentive for the country and also an economic imperative as well. And for the global strategy, which this UN Secretary General launched last year during the SDG Summit, we launched that very specifically at the same time as the summit because we have seen a lot of progress under the MDGs, particularly for reducing maternal and child mortality. We don't want to say we're starting again. We want that to continue. We want that to continue to accelerate. But we also recognize we need to work across sectors to achieve that. Health sector cannot achieve that alone. We need health-enhancing sectors, education, nutrition, water, sanitation, women's empowerment, and gender absolutely are at the center. So the global strategy is a front runner really for an implementation plan as well of how we achieve that and bringing the most diverse stakeholders around the table to look at concrete actions and also concrete investments. And so one of the key areas where the collaboration between Every Woman, Every Child and the Deliver for Good campaign is how can we bring the global leaders that we convene under Every Woman, Every Child closer together with civil society, with women on the ground in the communities, so that the dialogue and the action can happen together.
So it's not just at the global level, as Karen was saying, but we really get it down to what matters on the ground. And I want to bring back in Katja Iversen. Assuming all of us in this room are inspired, we've heard this call to action, we get it now, we see how it connects on so many levels to education and nutrition and health and land. What do we do now? What should all of us who care about these issues, who believe it, again, this is a room of people who believe this walking in, I'm sure, but what do they do to actually drive this implementation forward and be a part of Deliver for Good?
Good, I'm going to be quick because we'd like to hear some more voices. So I'm going to say join us as an ally and then as a supporter. Being a little cheeky, we got the first economic supporter this week, and thank you very much to Denmark. But there's space for many more. So it's support in that material sense, but it's also join the campaign, sign up on the websites. There's a beautiful commitment. You heard a little bit of it in the movie. You can sign up as an individual. You can sign up, and that's very important as well, as an organization. Imagine the number of people that we can reach if we add together everything in this room. So kind of doing that and joining around this. We're not asking you to kind of leave your own mandate or anything, but kind of really put girls and women at the center and work and help push and then do it under that hat. Share the evidence. Those briefs are brilliant. Thanks to everybody who worked on them, and I know a lot of you worked really hard. Build the best practices. It's also about really showcasing the solutions. We came out of the Women Deliver conference with hundreds of solutions. We launched them this week. They are on the website, and we'll keep. So this is also an invitation to share your solutions. It's a good way to get attention as well. So everybody's done something really good that's proven to work, and we're going to gather those solutions that can inspire and energize. And so it's getting that broad coalition, and it's keep capacity building. We have in Women Deliver, we're going to do something very concrete around capacity building, and I'm going to put that out. I won't kind of spoil the whole thing right now, but that really, how can we get people to be advocates at every level, in every setting? You know, we can convince each other, we're already convinced, but sometimes when I go into meetings, whether it's refugee and migrants or some of the other issues that might be a little further away from this community, you know, they still forget that girls and women play a role. And I'm kind of, well, how hard can it be to put that in? And with our reach, we can get in anywhere.
Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah, it's not done. It is not over by any stretch. And we may feel like we made a lot of progress in getting people to understand that at a certain level, but I completely agree. As you dig deeper on issues, and data is a great example where we've talked about this for many, many years, and yet there's so little data because the investments weren't made. So where the rubber hits the road, we haven't really done it as well as we can, and there's much, much more to do. I do want to bring in some more voices around the room. David Morley is here from UNICEF Canada, and you're our host as well today. Thank you, David. I'd just like to hear your thoughts on today's discussion.
Thanks very much, Raj. This is 30 years ago. I was working with a women's movement in the favelas in the city of Belo Horizonte.
I don't think we're hearing you, unfortunately.
30 years ago, I was working with a women's movement in the favelas of Belo Horizonte, Brazil. It was fighting for women's rights and for children's rights. It sounded a lot what you were saying, Dina. Those women were incredible mentors for me, and I was thinking it's blindingly obvious that investing in women is going to be the way that we make the social change. And I'm reminded by what we're saying here that it isn't always blindingly obvious, that we do have to keep pushing. I think we need to simplify our language so that everybody can understand this. Today for UNICEF Canada, I'm seeing another group, totally different group of women leaders. They're sitting over here. We call them our 25th team of Canadian women who are supporting the work of UNICEF, who are advocates for women, for change. It's a reminder that it has to go from the favelas to, well, for us in Canada, but for countries around the world, that we have to be able to bring people together from all these different walks of life for whom the importance of women is blindingly obvious, and maybe we have to be out sharing it with the world clearly more than we did know. That's why for us at UNICEF Canada, we have become, and we're proud to be, a Tier 2, I wish I had a better name than Tier 2, but a tier 2 ally. We're going to be continuing to advocate for women, for the importance of this campaign and the importance of investment in women so that we can. It's achieving goals. No, it's not. It's changing lives and making the world better for everybody. We're really happy to be here, Raj. Thanks
so much for that, David. Makala Krishnan is here from McKinsey & Company. Can you give us your thoughts, please?
Yes, absolutely. Well, firstly, I should say we're very excited to be a part of the Deliver for Good campaign, and I think there's maybe 3 themes that we've heard repeatedly in the discussions that really struck us as being core philosophies of the campaign that we really appreciated. I think one is the fact that women and girls are at the center of this campaign. I think that's really where you need to start, and a lot of people have spoken to that. I think the second is this idea of breaking down silos. And there's really 2 types of silos, I think, that the campaign gets at, and I think it's important to keep both those silos in mind. One is a cross-sectoral silos. How can we build deeper partnerships across the private, public, and social sector, and even different types of private sector companies, different types of social sector companies? How do we build collaborations across different groups working on different aspects of the Deliver for Good goals? Because we do know from our work that you can't look at a single issue pertaining to gender equality in a silo. And a woman facing these issues doesn't just face one challenge. She faces challenges at home. She faces challenges when she goes to work. So exploring and trying to address these issues in silos, I think, will not accelerate progress. The last piece, which Katya, you were referring to, is how women and girls fits into the broader SDG agenda. And I think we all recognize in this room that it's a core part of multiple elements of the SDGs, not just Goal 5. And I think it's important to continue to have the dialogue outside of this community and ensure that women and girls are at the heart of everything that's happening with the SDGs. The last thing I wanted to talk about is this idea of ripple effects. And Katya, I wanted to paraphrase you from the video. We fundamentally believe that investing in women and girls is not just the right thing to do, it's the sound thing to do, it's the smart thing to do. Our research has shown that investing in women and girls is crucial to economic growth, and it's crucial to inclusive economic growth. We have done some analysis that says that if women and girls participate more equally in the economy, global GDP could increase by $12 trillion, that's trillion with a T, in 2025. That's equivalent to adding economies the size of UK, Japan, and Germany to the world in 10 years. And this is not based on fully bridging gender gaps. This is based on countries achieving the best-in-class rate of progress of their regional peers. So it's based on what the world has achieved historically. It's based on empirical evidence. It's an aspirational goal, but it's an achievable goal. So talking to politicians and policymakers, this is not just about investing in women and girls to improve the lives of women and girls, which is fundamental, and it should be the core of all our efforts and activities. But this is also about inclusive economic growth for both developed and developing economies.
That's a great point to emphasize that those big, impressive numbers that McKinsey put out are because you've got a lot of big economies in the world that still have a long way to go. This is not a question of only the poorest countries in the world. Every country has real progress to make on women and girls. I would like to bring in a youth voice to join us as well, someone who was in Copenhagen. Some of you may have had the chance to meet her there. Nana Abdul Saud, who is here from Egypt. And please give us your thoughts on the discussion so far.
Good morning. Thank you so much for all of your insights on the different sectors and how the Deliver for Good campaign is touching base with your respective fields. I actually have a question as a young person. I'm just curious, what is the role of young people in the initiative of Deliver for Good? So we've heard a lot of insights of how it is crucial to invest in young women and girls. But like, where do I stand as a young person from this? Thank you.
Thank you for that. I think maybe I can pass that question to you if you feel like answering it, Katya.
Yeah.
We don't have much time.
Okay, good. I'll be fast. Absolutely engaged on all levels. Development of the evidence, both in the collection but also in the review. Have young people been involved? Women Deliver has wonderful young leaders around the world, as do many of the partners, and many have been involved and will be more involved. You know, I'll take that home and say, okay, how can we have a deliberate youth inclusion and engagement strategy around this? Also because, well, that's also the way to get it further out. You know, it's about young people's lives, it's about the young woman's life, it's about the adolescent girl's life. You could say the face of this campaign is the face of an adolescent girl. But so yes, absolutely involved, and very much also in the capacity building. The 12 investment, we're thinking about really having training on those 12, and who else better to teach us how to do it.
Yeah, I have the privilege to be on the Young Leader program that is Women Deliver running, so I'm pretty much engaged in the initiative. My question is more of, how is this reflecting in all different sectors? So I have the privilege to be engaged in the initiative itself, and I think I have a role, like, personally, but I'm thinking of like where young people fit within all of the core partners' strategy in reflecting this on the ground.
Okay. I'd like to open that to partners as well, if we have a minute to that. But else I'd say, you know, this campaign is not going to roll if young people are not involved. So when we talk country level, when we talk about getting it into the SDGs, those voices and actions, disruptive actions, can be potent.
I think it is an issue probably for every partner that wants to be engaged in this, for this initiative, but also in general in all of our work, right? How do we better engage youth? Does any one of the partners want to just give a quick, very quick intervention on that point? Please.
I mean, thanks a lot. I think what's important is that we all bring our best assets into this. For Plan International, it's our Because I'm a Girl campaign, which is today is a global movement of young girls really fighting for change and self-fulfillment, for community change, and for national change. We are hoping to bring that asset to bear in this partnership, and would love all of you to join the movement.
Thank you. I know we are really tight. 0 questions? No more? Okay. We can't take any more questions. I wish we could. I'm being told we're way over time, and we've got to stay on time. We're about to finish, but we will, as we wrap. Hopefully, people will be in the room and have a chance to answer some of the additional questions that are here. I want to introduce our next speaker, Her Royal Highness Crown Princess Mary of Denmark, to close our session with some brief remarks. And I do want to just note for those of you who
Stand, do you want to sit? What do you prefer?
It's your choice. You may stand or you may sit. Okay, and
I'll sit down again.
I do want to just note for those who may not have been in Copenhagen that the Crown Princess was the patron of that event. She could very easily have gone out on that high note because it was an amazing event in Copenhagen, but you're here. You are sticking to this issue. This is something you care deeply about, and we very much appreciate your commitment to it.
It's also an issue I've been stuck to for longer than that. But, well, it's wonderful to be here this morning for the New York launch of Deliver for Good campaign. Thank you, Katjan, and the team at Women Deliver, and for all the partners that are here today to support the campaign. It's exciting to witness the commitment in the room this morning to integrated approaches, and that gender strongly unifies us, and that individual mandates can be strengthened by applying the gender lens and perhaps the youth lens to it. As we have heard, at the heart of the campaign is the idea that we must change the narrative around girls and women, from victims and voiceless to powerful agents of change and drivers of global development. This is a mission I strongly believe in. As a woman, as a daughter, a sister, a mother, a wife, as a friend, and as a global citizen, and as a human who has had access, equal access to education, health, the labour market, political representation, and has also seen the dire consequences of not having or having limited access to those. Sexual and reproductive health and rights, gender equality, and the human rights and empowerment of women and girls, and the rights and participation of adolescents and youth are issues that concern me, worry me, frustrate me, and I'm committed to contributing how and where I can to be part of the change that our world needs. Yes, in May, I had the honour of being the patron of the Women Deliver 2016 conference, which was the first gathering of the development community after the adoption of the 2030 Agenda to strategise about how to implement the new Sustainable Development Goals so they matter in the lives of women and girls. Now, the conference certainly exceeded my expectations, and I left, as I'm sure many did, inspired and energised, and with even a stronger commitment to do what I can to support the realisation of the many solutions identified at the conference and keep that energy and momentum alive. And that's why I'm here today, and that is why I've agreed to actively support the Deliver for Good campaign. For me, one of the things that makes the Deliver for Good campaign unique and inspiring is that rather than focusing on the problems that we all know too well and have expressed also here this morning, is it focuses on girls and women and the solutions and benefits that they need. It breaks the silo mentality and that has dominated the global development for decades and champions new collaborative approaches and innovative solutions, because we have to challenge the status quo. We need change to create change. And Deliver for Good will do so by mobilizing allies across sectors and issues, changing the global narrative, and making us realize the key investments across all sectors in girls and women will deliver not just for the individual girl and woman or their family, but for society as a whole. And that was the strong message that came out of Women Deliver conference in Copenhagen. And that is what we have to deliver. This campaign sets out to be what the conference was, action-driven, to generate action and innovation and engagement through the implementation of the SDGs at global, regional and local level. So together, let's deliver for girls and women, so no matter who they are, where they live, what they have, can they fulfill and have the power to control their own destinies. Thank you.
Thank you. Something the Crown Princess said really resonated with me when you talked about looking at this just as a human being. And I know it's hard because many of us here are representing an institution. There's a sense of, well, we're in a classroom, we're very intellectual about these issues. But I think it's important to remember that these goals that we're all here talking about, there's something unique about them. They're universal for the first time. They apply to every country on earth. So all of us as citizens of some place or another can look at the discussion we're having today and just apply it back to where you're from and say, this matters in my own country in some way. And maybe even apply it to your own life and say, what does this mean in my family, in my own history? I can tell you, for example, my grandmother, she was married at 13 years old, right? And I can think of that as a story. I think we all have those kinds of stories in our lives. And I would encourage you to take from this discussion something out of it that you might share on social media, to put it out there. There's a hashtag Deliver for Good. There's another hashtag through the Every Woman, Every Child initiative. I think it's EWEC in me. Is me. So please share those, and maybe there's one other as well here. What is it? UNGA, of course. Hashtag UNGA. If you haven't done that, no one's going to see it. So hashtag UNGA. Make sure you put that in as well. But think about what it means for you personally. I would encourage you to take off the institutional hat for just a moment. And remember, there is a reason that Katja and her fantastic team at Women Deliver have decided to put together this collection of people. It takes a village. There's a political candidate who has said that, you may know. It takes a village. And in a way, you need everyone's vote for her in this country, but we also need everyone's voice for these issues. And there is no opportunity to say, well, that's someone else's thing. This is our thing. Okay, we all have to play a role in it. Whatever your background, whatever organization you represent, whatever your sector or issue, this is our collective responsibility to deliver for good. Thank you.
Wherever inequality lives, there stands a girl or woman able to turn the tide of adversity into a tidal wave of progress. We simply have to commit to her. Deliver for Good is a global campaign that applies a gender lens to the Sustainable Development Goals and promotes 12 critical investments in girls and women to power progress for all.
It's an integrated campaign, multi-sector, where we put the woman, the whole woman, the girl at the center. Not a disease, not an issue, not a body part, but the whole woman.
Girls and women carry more than babies or water. They carry families. They carry businesses. They carry potential. And when we invest in their health, rights, and well-being, it creates a positive ripple effect that lifts up entire countries. Give girls and women access to health care. They will deliver more resilient families.
Women transform societies, and when you empower them, they empower everybody else.
Give girls and women the chance to learn. They will deliver stronger economies.
We have to go as far as we possibly can to eliminate barriers, get rid of laws that are different between men and women, to make sure that women have accounts and access to capital. Those are the very things we need to do to have growing competitive societies.
Give girls and women opportunities. They will deliver solutions.
Girls and women have such an untapped potential. They deliver so much more than babies. And investing in them is not only the right thing to do, it is the sound thing to do.
Deliver for them. Deliver for all. Deliver for good.